the other type of communication style that makes you most uncomfortable. Okay, so where are my thinkers? Raise them, be proud. Be proud of my thinkers. Okay, so my thinkers, your primary functions is that you study. I love the word tenacious when we describe people like that because they don't give up. They're like expert problem solvers, and they see problem solving as a challenge, a welcome challenge, not an unwelcome hurdle, if you will. Okay? They make a lot of observations, and they rely very heavily on rational thinking. So not necessarily living in a dream world or doing what if. They rely mostly on logic and things that are proven, things that are very measurable and data-driven. Okay? They tend to sleep on decisions before making them because, again, with all the logic comes a lot of research. With research takes time, right? So a lot of times thinkers can be seen as being slow to react, but really they're just processing because they want to make sure that they're doing things that make sense. Okay? So, my experience with my husband, I am married to a thinker. And so when it would take him a minute, we'd be engaging in conversation, and I tend to be a really quick thinker, and I respond pretty quickly to things. And when he would just stare at me when I'd ask a question, and I'm like, are you not listening? Like, I would accuse him of not listening, and he's like, actually, it's just the opposite. I'm actually really listening, and I'm really thinking, and I just need a minute to let this marinate before I speak. So, we had to change the way that we communicated with each other pretty quickly. Okay? So, thinkers, if you're not that, you typically are not going to have those knee-jerk reactions to things because you're going to be thinking it over. You don't like, for that same reason, you don't like half-baked or half-cooked ideas. You like things to be, and you know things are going to work if you're going to implement that kind of change, or you're going to make that kind of decision. At your best, you are forces of progress and thinking. We need thinkers on our team. Absolutely. Okay? You see beyond emotions and illusions. So typically thinkers are the least likely to buy things from salespeople because they're going to be like, that's you're giving me a schlick and I don't like that. Okay? And I know that that's not going to work because, and you're going to spout off all these reasons and then you're not going to buy it. Okay? You tend to identify with being organized, intelligent, and very strong. It doesn't surprise me that my sciencey type people a lot of them are thinkers. However, we have to talk about each other at our worst because we're not always at our best. So at our worst, my thinkers tend to be a little overly cautious and conservative. And when I say the word conservative, I don't mean politically. I just mean a little more reserved in the decisions that you make. You tend to play it safe and play by the rules. That's what I mean. Okay? You're very deliberate, so any decision that you make, you've already thought about it. You're not typically one of those that lets word vomit out and then you're like trying to figure out how to shut it back in because you've already thought about it before you let anything come out of your mouth. Sometimes you can be seen as a little bit cold because you can see past people's emotions. So some people who are very feely, very sensitive, very feely, can interpret you as being cold. Under stress, you can see that indecisiveness and people may perceive you as being weak or not listening, like I accused my husband of. Are you not listening? No, actually doing the opposite kind of a thing. That you may be a little rigid or resistant to new ideas because when you are logic driven and you know something works, why change it? Those of you who are thinkers, does that make sense to you? Okay, those of you who are not so much on the thinker side, like why? Innovation's great, change is great. Okay, again, where the miscommunication comes in. Do I have any feelers in here? No feelers. Nobody's the feeler. Okay, here we go. I'm not a feeler either, so I don't know, we're gonna get through this. But here's the thing, okay? Feelers tend to be very dynamic and stimulating personality types. They're naturally very charismatic to where they'll walk into a room and they're good with all the energy, okay? They're pretty much, a lot of them are extroverts, they're all pretty friendly. They tend to be dreamers. They don't ever lose that childlike sense of being able to get out of their own head, okay? They notice everything though. Like if you sat wrong, or like you kind of sort of rolled your eyes, they probably saw it, and then they're gonna feel something about it. I mean, you may have rolled your eyes at somebody across the room, But if you made eye contact with a person, you rolled their eyes, they're like, oh God, I did something. Because they're very perceptive into what other people are doing constantly, okay? They're really, really good at predicting behavior. You said you're psychology? Yes? They're great, great psychologists and counselors because they can predict behavior because they are so good at examining people. And feel, again, they're just a little more in tune with that side of their brain, with the emotional side of their brain. At their best, they're really good at communicating, they're really good at words. Typically, feelers are good writers as well. A lot of musicians, a lot of people who are on that art side are feelers. There tend to be very empathetic listeners. We're going to watch Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory teach us how to not be empathetic here in a little while. So that is definitely not him. And they are typically the cheerleaders. Okay, they're going to keep you going. They're going to push you up the mountain when things get a little harder. Okay, because again, they're very in tune with what you're thinking. But at their worst, they can tend to be a little more process-driven than action. So again, they stay in that dreaming phase for too long. Think of all the possibilities we could do. Think of all the possibilities we could do. And the thinkers are like, okay, that's great, do something, right? Okay. They often say that it just doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel right. My gut just doesn't want me to do that. And so for, again, people who are a little more logically driven are like, that doesn't even make sense. Your gut doesn't think, quite literally, right? Okay. They tend to be highly emotional, so they feel things. They wear their emotions on their sleeve. If they're upset, you probably know it when they walk in the door. The way that they, like the body language that they have coming into the door, the outward, okay? They tend to be very, very open about the way they feel. And with that, they can be a little defensive, especially when they're under stress or somebody attacks an idea or a dream or tells them they can't do something. The best way to upset a feeler is to tell them they can't do something. They can't be something, okay? And again, their moods would fluctuate. Okay, so one thing happens and they're really upset, and then another thing happens and they're like, yay, right? So it's just all over the place. They're not the steady. All right, who are my sensors? Any sensors in here? Okay, cool. Sensors. These are the resourceful, determined doers. A lot of times in the workplace, we call these people the Herculean workers because they can do a lot. Okay? They thrive on working on more than one project, so their hands are going to be in a lot of pots. If you're thinking about in school, these people tend to be really involved in things. So they're in a lot of clubs, they're in a leadership organization. They also volunteer at the soup kitchen on the weekends. They do a lot of things. They have to be constantly stimulated, okay? They need to understand all of it, who, what, when, where, why. Let me know the entire process. I need to know the purpose for what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Okay, so it's not that they don't have the ability to dream, it's just that I need to know how far am I allowed to dream? Is there a line? I don't want to cross the line, right? And they learn really well through personal experience. So they use a lot of narrative when they do things. Y'all know what I mean by narrative? Storytelling. Does anyone have a friend that's just like, gosh, they are such a good storyteller? I have a friend like that. His name is Rex, and it's so, Rex is not a common name, so like, when we think about Rex, I'm like, Rex, he tells good stories, and it's so descriptive of the kind of stories that he can tell anything and make it funny. He is just such a good storyteller. And it's because he doesn't mind sharing personal experience, and he really likes to develop relationships with people. So it's not so much the touchy-feely, tell me your hopes and dreams. It's like, I just want to hang out. Like, I just want to get to know you. Let's go grab lunch. I don't want to be alone. Okay, let's go do stuff. At their best, we already talked about the Herculean workers. They're very pragmatic, though, meaning because they're very process-driven. And then they tend to be very spirited, yet very, very down-to-earth. At their worst, though, they are not very good at long-term results. So they're really good at getting a lot of things done. But a project that might take a year, just so y'all know, I planned my wedding in 5 months. You want to know why? Because if I knew I had a year and a half, it just wouldn't have happened. We weren't going to be married. I would change my mind 15 different times. Okay, I need to have, gotta do it quick. Gotta do it, okay? They tend to, overemphasizing those short-term wins. And then under stress, they can tend to be seen as anti-intellectual. Why do we think that might be? Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times these are your frontline people. Like you need people to just like take some bullets, send one. Send a sensor, okay, because they got it. But they also tend to be very opinionated, but they are also very, and they're only loyal to the point in which you also give them something back. So if someone has proven to you that they have no value, like they cannot intellectually stimulate you, you've asked them to do something and they haven't done it, sensors aren't going to necessarily be rude, they're just going to ask you, they're going to act like you don't exist. Okay, so that's a very, very negative trait that sensors have. Lastly, my intuitors. 2, yay, good. Okay, so my intuitors. You are fast and deep thinkers and you're very, very imaginative. Is anyone in here familiar with Harry Potter? Harry Potter? My 2 that are intuitors, you know Harry Potter? The intuitors tend to be Ravenclaws. And if you know anything about anything more than just the Harry Potter movies and the novels, Ravenclaws actually secretly my favorite house. I'm not one, but they're my favorite house because they are this. They're deep thinkers, they're imaginative. They see things very differently than the rest of the world. They tend to be the most creative people, but somehow there's still logic. Okay? They question themselves, a lot of times they're into theory. They like why. They need to know why about everything, and they have to have a purpose. What's the purpose behind this? They have strong, broad vision. So intuitors mixed with sensors are pretty good, because one sees long-term, one sees short-term, good match. Okay? And you excel with imaginative tasks. So literally, you don't mind critical creative thinking. So we have our thinkers who are critical thinkers, and then you all have the creative thinking. So somebody can hand you a project with a basic set of parameters, and it's like, here you go, do it however you see fit. To someone like a personality type, like a sensor or like a thinker, they're like, no, I need directions. Like, give steps. I need steps. I need a checklist. For you all, though, you're like, just tell me what the basic parameters are. Do it my own way. Okay? They're really good at being leaders and visionaries, and they're very situationally oriented. I challenge you to look up situational leadership theory, write it down, take a look at it in your spare time, take 10 minutes, it's worth it. Situational leadership theory, it's a good one. Intuitors are really naturally inclined to be very good at that leadership style. And they tend to be very innovative and fresh. But at your worst, they tend to be a little short on action, again, because they like to know things before they do things. They avoid the nitty-gritty tasks that are boring because they're imaginative, right? It's not feeding that part of their soul. And sometimes they can be a little impatient and irritable if things aren't moving at the pace that they want them to. Okay? Under stress, they tend to be a little overly intellectual, so if you get an intuitor and a thinker in a room together, you got to throw a feeler or a sensor in there somewhere to get the ball rolling. Okay, because they're just going to get bogged down in details. And they tend to be a little more indifferent to what other people think and feel. They're like, I'm going to march to the beat of my own drum and I'm going to be okay. Okay? All right. So how do we do this? And so again, I'm going to go through this very, very quickly. But people with was anyone thinker the lowest for them? Okay. So for you, if you are in a situation with a thinker, you need to empathize with the way that they are, that they're going to appreciate structure and organization, that they want time-related things and measurable progress and measurable movement, right? Anybody in here low on the feeler scale? The feeler is their lowest? Anybody? One of the lowest? Okay, all right. If you're working with a feeler, just be aware that they are reading into everything you're doing. Seriously. And just understand that RBF with feelers is not a good thing. So if you know that that is you and you are in that situation, soften just a little. I had to do that. I have an almost 3-year-old, and she said, "Mommy, why are you mad?" I said, "You're not mad. Why are you mad?" And she said, "Wrinkles." Great. Let's make that Botox appointment. And I need to stop scowling, because I even scowl in my sleep. All the tension, it goes right here. Yeah, it all goes right here. Okay, so I have to be mindful of that when I'm talking to people. It's just who I am, so that. Anybody who is low on the sensor scale? Sensor is their lowest? Okay, all right. That they Sensors like action, so if you're working with a sensor, try to have some sort of action plan, like a give and take, okay? Because keep in mind that you're probably one of their lowest too, so they're doing things to keep you in mind, and you're doing things to keep them in mind, and everything's great, in theory, right? And we know it's a lot harder than that. And be a little more willing to take risks. So if they come up with an idea that's outlandish, thinkers, don't be like, no, it's not gonna work. Let me give you 18 reasons off the top of my head, and 27 more from Google why that's not gonna work. Hear them out. Okay, hear them out and then talk about why we need to at least hear them out. Okay. Let's go to interpersonal. True or false? Treat those you communicate with as you wish to be treated. True or false? False. Why?
Because you said everyone has whatever they are prepared and how to do things, so you have to treat people how you would they were not.
Beautiful. It's called communication accommodation theory. Again, something else for you to look at later if you want to talk about that. Communication accommodation theory. And if you are treating people the way that